All right, this is our second lecture, and we're going to start looking at our textbook, Introduction to AutoCAD 2015 for Civil Engineering Applications. Used this book last year, the 2014 version. This year we're going to be using AutoCAD 2015. We'll go through some of the options for downloading. I'll post some documents up online. I've already done some to show you how to download the free software for educational use. It is the full-blown version. The only difference between this and a commercial version of the software is this version will print around the border of your prints or drawings a note that it is a educational use only version of the software. Other than that, it is unchanged. So it has all of the bells and whistles that you would expect to see with the full-blown version. So we're going to start looking at this book, and we're going to go through chapter 1 and part of chapter 2. I'm going to go through it with you on this video lecture and hit some of the high points. And I did this by just extracting some of the the illustrations so that we can kind of just get a good feel for where we're at and where we're going to be heading with the software. First couple of chapters are basically introductions into the tools and how we set up our drawing files with the software. Our lab portions of this class will go into more detail and actual exercises that we can use to create our drawings in the lab. So this is our opportunity to kind of get a little more in tune with the whole system. Now, it wasn't too many years ago when we would actually have you do several drawings on paper and pencil. Probably still have a few exercises that we'll do this semester, just to say we'll never forget the use of paper and pencil. But for the most part, we want to concentrate on using the computers to do our technical drawing for us. We look at engineering problems, whether it's civil, mechanical, architectural. The graphics are a key element in handling any type of engineering problem, along with communication, problem solving principles, analysis, and organization. And organization is a big one here because we want to make sure that whatever we do, it is organized in such a fashion that if we give it to the next person, they're going to understand exactly where we're going with this. But the number one tool that is used in the engineering field to communicate these ideas is with graphics. Whether you're up on a whiteboard sketching something out for somebody to give them a better idea. I've seen mechanical engineers drawing out their piping layouts. We've seen electricians laying out their wiring and their outlets, and we've seen plumbers doing their piping. We've seen the architects doing their thing and laying things out. And whether you're doing it on a whiteboard or piece of paper, a napkin, or on the computer, we start out with very general concepts, and we don't fine-tune those concepts until we have a good, reasonable idea of the overall picture of what we're looking for. So we don't get into a lot of detail right off. We really kind of box these things out and do some really rough sketches, what we call thumbnail sketches, to get started, and then we would move forward from there. So I don't think you're going to have everything all detailed right off the bat. We're really starting out with some very basic ideas. For instance, we have this drawing. You'll see it on page 3 of your textbook. We talk about drawing methods. And at the top, we see a computer-drawn sketch with dimensions. We have, this is inches, it's 14 inches wide, but it also has a plus and a minus, an upper and a lower tolerance. Sometimes we put these in our dimensions. Down at the bottom, we can see a hand sketch where somebody has just taken a pencil and just sketched out the same door very roughly. And next to that, we can take a tool, we can take a straight edge, and we can kind of do it a little bit neater in that fashion. A mechanical drawing, for instance. And then we can also do the same type of drawing with our CAD software. All three are equally as good. They give us the same message. This one is a little more artistic. This one's a little bit more mechanical. But we learn to interpret these drawings as we go. The next thing we're going to be looking at is our scales. We can measure things off on a scale. We see on figure 1.4 up here at the top, or excuse me, 1-4, we see a scale, and it has increments of 10. This increment here would be a partially divided scale, so we have these divided into segments. If we wanted to measure this object from this point to this point, we could take, if we can't move a scale to it, we can take a piece of paper, we can make a mark here, move that object down onto the scale, and figure out that it is a distance of 11 units from this point to this point. 10 plus 1. You see that in your book on page 6 and 7. On our next slide, we're going to see one object. This has a scale of 1 to 1, meaning this is full scale. This is the actual size. If I look at the end of this piece, this object, and I laid it on the piece of paper, it would match up to this exactly. This one is a scale of 2 to 1, meaning it's twice the size of its actual real size. And here's one that's 1 to 2, which is half the size of the full scale drawing. So 1 to 1, 2 to 1, 1 to 2, these are ratios. Think 1/2. And there's some formulas. If you looked on the previous pages, on page 4 and 5, they talk about scale and they give you some formulas. And I'm going to kind of simplify this for you in the way that I think of scales. If I have a scale that's 1 to 1, that's a ratio. Let's say I have a scale that's 1 inch to 1 foot. What I'm going to think in my mind is, what is the ratio? How many, if 1 inch is what I'm going to see on the paper and 1 foot is the actual size, then I want to say, well, how many of my paper sizes are in my actual size? How many inches are there in a foot? There are 12. So my ratio would be 1 to 12. If we look at, and we can see some of these ratios down here, if we actually get into our AutoCAD program, we'll see, and this is shown on page 9, that we have a list of scales. When we get into sheet files and viewports, we can see there's our 2 to 1 scale. This would be a 2 times the actual size. If we were able to flip this up and down, we'd see some of our more normal scales. So we know 1 inch to a foot, 1 inch equals a foot, is going to be a 1 to 12 ratio. That is what we tell the computer we want to scale our drawing down to fit on that paper, so it'll do a 1 to 12 ratio. Very easy to think of or conceive of. Let's think about another scale. If it was 1 inch equals 10 feet, that would be, how many inches are there in 10 feet? Well, it'd be 10 times 12 would be 120, so the ratio would be 1 to 120, and that's simply all you need to do. That's a normal scale that we would use to lay out something like a parking lot or a large building. You might need a 1 to 10. We said it's a 1 inch equals 20 feet, then it would be 1 to 240, 2 times a 1 to 10 scale. If we get into some common architectural scales, we might be thinking about 1/4 inch equals a foot. Well, if 1 inch equals a foot is 1 to 12, then 1/4 inch equals a foot is, how many quarter inches are there in 1 foot? 4 times 12, there would be a 1 to 48 ratio. Now some of these are a little more difficult to figure, like a 1/32 or a 1/16. If you find the ratio, you would say 1 divided by 16 would give you a decimal number. You divide that into a foot to figure out how many of those are in 1 foot, and you can figure out what your ratio would be. Some of them are simple. Sometimes you got to get your calculator out to do it, and you might end up with something like 5.33 units as a ratio that gets multiplied out. But normally we're going to have some pretty straightforward ones, and we can customize these and make our own scales. But you want to do something that you can actually measure out with a scale or a tape measure. Here's our program, AutoCAD 2015 English. I suppose if you speak another language you could download it in French or German. However, I'm going to be using the English version. When we open up our screen, you can go down to your Start menu, go to your Programs. Normally we're going to put this on our desktop anyway, but you're going to see AutoCAD 2015 English. You would just double click on that. This is assuming you've got your license in place. The first thing you're going to see coming up on your screen is a desktop analysis program. If you are online, AutoCAD is going to ask that they can kind of watch over you if you would like, and you can say okay or not okay. What they're going to do is just take some data as to how long you're on the computer, what kind of drawings you're putting out, how much data you're putting out. In the educational version, they're probably not too concerned, so I wouldn't worry too much about this. If you look at the program, it says Autodesk would appreciate your participation in the desktop analytics to help make our products more effective in meeting your needs. The information Autodesk collects is product use, session length, country, location, document type, document size, and whether the document was opened from a local storage or Autodesk 360. Autodesk offers a free cloud storage area. I haven't used it too much, but I do have it available. And they promise not to use any of the information they collect to identify or contact you. And they've been pretty good. I really haven't had any issues with AutoCAD bugging me with bum emails. Further on, I'm up to page, where am I? I'm on page 14 now. Once you get through the fluff and get in here, you're going to see this is your main screen where you would start your drawing. It would have any recent documents would be shown in this center area. Graphically, it would show a thumbnail of a recent document. So if you're day after day going in working on the same documents, it's going to show 3 or 4 of the latest documents that you've worked on. You may just want to open up a new file or create a new file, and you can do that from here. We look at the sidebar. If you go up here and click on this A up at the top, you are going to see this. It's going to drop down. You can say new, or I just want to open an existing drawing, or I want to convert something, or I want to recover a drawing. It's got a little band-aid there. And sometimes it'll have a list of drawings that recent documents that you've had open here. Right now, as a new program, it probably doesn't have any in place for you. If you say new, you're going to come up with a template list. Now keep in mind that anything, this ACAD is just your straight up architectural or imperial. In other words, it's not going to have any, it's going to be in inches or it's going to be in feet, so it's set up that way. If you're going to work in metric, you would want to open up the ACAD ISO. Anything that says ISO on it is going to be a metric drawing file. So this is our template. You're just going to select this one if that's the one we're going to use, and you'd say okay, and then it's going to open it up and it comes up as drawing 1. You'll see drawing 1 is listed here, and we can focus on it. You're going to look at your properties in the drawing. So down here at the bottom, I think it's shown probably better. Right here in this area there's a little tool. Let's actually find the right one. Looks like a little gear. I think it's this one right here. Or this one, I'm sorry. This one right here. That's your settings. It's hard to see on the screen. And when you click on that, you're going to come some drafting and annotation screens. It allows you to set up for some properties. Your ribbon color. This one happens to show a graph in the back, so you can customize your workspace here. So this is a typical window screen that you might see in AutoCAD with the white background. Normally I draw with something in the black background, but this one's been set up with a white. We can play around with that. The AutoCAD interface is called a workspace, or drafting and annotation is what you're going to see in this workspace. So it has all of our tools on the ribbon bar up here at the top. We can turn off the if we right click, I think we just right click in the screen. We'll get into this a little bit more in the lab, but you can play around with it yourself. If you right click, you can go to options and do some of the settings. Now, part of chapter 2, when we get into it, is really going to cover some things about customizing AutoCAD, and I would refrain from doing any major customization with your tools, because from a teaching standpoint, if you hide your tools on me, it makes it difficult for me to help you get through some of these areas. So let's explore this anyway, some of the larger portions. Up here at the top we have our tabs, and these are all different tool ribbons. So right now we're in the home tool ribbon. If you click one of these other ones, it's going to bring up a different tool ribbon, but this is our main home tool ribbon. We can see it's got our drawing files, our modification tools, our annotation tools, and our layer properties on this side. This is our cursor down here. This is our world coordinate system. Where X and Y come together is 0, 0. That is base 0. Down here at the bottom is our command line, where we can type in commands. We have some tabs down here below that are our models and our layouts. This is where our sheet files would be located, but our model is what we're going to be drawing in. This is our drawing area here. Down below our tools, these are called panels. You'll notice they have little arrows. I used to call them flyouts. I'm not sure what they call them, but if you click these arrows down, it gives you more tool options when you actually get into the program. And this is our display tool, meaning we're in a top view and we're working in a 2D environment in this case. If we look on the other side, this is on page 19, we have our file option, whether we want to maximize or minimize or restore, just like any Windows command. We have our view cube. Because we're working in 2D, we're actually working in a top view. Again, we have our cursor. We have our navigation bar, which we don't need too much because we can use our mouse to kind of navigate on the screen, as you'll see in some of the other videos that we've put together. We have a vertical scroll bar. Again, something you probably don't need too much because we can scroll with our mouse. And down here at the bottom we have our status bar. And that's something that we'll look into a little bit further on. But these are the basic areas of the toolbox, and this is just, again, scratching the surface of what we're looking at here in AutoCAD 2015. Again, down at the bottom we have model, layout, and the user can switch to the model space or a layout by selecting the model or layout tabs respectively from the lower corner. If I select model, again, it's actually this is what I'm going to be drawing full scale on the screen. Everything I draw here, if it's a foot long, I'm going to say it's a foot long. When we get into our layout, that's basically what we refer to as our kind of our paper space. This is where we place our model into the paper so we can send it out. The model space, if we right click in the drawing area, we're going to get an options menu comes up. If we right click anywhere in the drawing area, we're going to see this options menu, and when we click on that, we're going to get this screen, and this screen is our options for how we want to set up our drawing. The drawing window colors, under context, I'm not sure if it shows it here, but we can see our color scheme is light. Arcs and circles, if we set this higher or lower, it sets it so that we don't see any segmented arches on the drawing. We can customize our colors for our fonts. We can change the size of our crosshairs. In the drawing, I'm sure it shows it here. Display resolution. I'm looking for it. I think it's under context, it says in the book. But you can play around with this. I'm not sure if it shows us everything in this one, but it just basically lets you customize your screen to how you want things to show up on the view. And sometimes working with a dark background is easier on your eyes than working with a white background on the computer screen. So you can kind of set this up the way you want and play around with this. If you look in your drafting, and this isn't live, so I can't really show it to you here, but it says in the drawing windows color dialog box. I'm trying to select the display tab, the options, press the color button in the Windows elements, open the drawing windows color, so that obviously drops down here so that you can pick your colors when you select this. Maybe it's on the next sheet. There it is, drawing colors windows. So let me just go back. You'd click right here, Windows elements, colors. When you click on this, you're going to get this screen. So you're working in 2D model space. You can select the background color, you can select your viewport controls, your grid axis, your auto snap markers, dynamic dimension lines. All of these can be kind of customized. And up here you see color white. This is your background color on the screen. And chances are I'll leave mine black because I don't want you all to get eye strain, and it's easier to see on the computer screens. For now, we can maybe make some adjustments later on. And then you can always restore it back to classic colors. But these are all ways for you to customize your screen so it appeals to you. But again, I wouldn't mess too much around with my tools. In this case, we can see a layout. Somebody's clicked on this layout tab, and what we see is basically a piece of paper. And this layout is set up so it might be an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. It could be 24 by 36, could be 11 by 17. Paper comes in specific sizes. Starting out with 8.5 by 11 is your letter. 11 by 17 would be a ledger size. We have a size C, which is 17 by 22. Size D is 22 by 34. We have architectural sizes up 24 by 36. We have 36 by 48. Basically, any size paper that you can actually plot out, you can create here. If you have something custom, you can create a screen like that. In this case, it has a viewport, and this viewport is basically a window to look at your model through. It doesn't print out, but allows you to scale that out and bring it in. So we can display this tab, and again, we can right click, hit the options button, and look at some different ways to lay this out. Down here at the bottom is our status bar, and some of the objects down here are available to let us set our snaps, how we want things to how we want to attach to lines. OSNAP is the term that we use if we're drawing a line or a circle. They have points of origin or center points or points of tangency. Rather than trying to zoom in and assume you're connecting onto the end of that line, this will allow you to physically see that you're attaching by giving you a little symbol on the drawing cursor. And here's your cursor down here. This is the cursor you'd see when you're selecting objects. It's just a square, so the cursor will actually change depending on what tools you're working on within the screen. And down here at the bottom, you'll also see we set this up so it has coordinates on the cursor. So as I'm moving my cursor around, it will give me XY coordinates using the world coordinate system. If I set a point on the drawing, it's going to go to a user coordinate system, a UCS, and start at 0, 0. So from that point, it's going out a distance, X and Y, or it's a distance, a polar distance, which would be distance and angle. So we can set that up any way we want. Within the model space, we also see the XY coordinates showing up down on the bottom of the screen. And again, we can change the size of the crosshair to whatever you like to use. And we'll push through that. Again, this is going through changing the aperture size and the crosshair size. And we're going to get into the actual world coordinate system. If you look on page 28 of your textbook, it talks about world coordinate system. If you're putting a drawing together using world coordinate systems, you're using XY coordinates that all start from 0, 0 in this axis point. If this is 0, 0 and I want to start a point up here, I need to tell it to go to X coordinate something something and then Y coordinate to start that point. And then from that point I need to know where the next point is from 0, 0. A little more difficult to use. Now, what we use 90% of the 95%, 96% of the time is the user coordinate system, where every time I place a point on the screen, it resets to, it makes that 0, 0. So I want to go X and Y distance from that point, and that point always becomes 0, 0 every time I create it. Much easier to work with. Again, you can either see the scroll bars or not. A lot of times you don't need to. So if you really need more real estate on your screen because you got kind of a small screen on your computer, you can eliminate some of these things like the scroll bars on the side, because again, you can use your mouse to move things around. And we can make adjustments in our view angle. One thing we don't want to do is start drawing a two-dimensional drawing when we're in an isometric view. We're at an angle, because then we try to put it on a piece of paper and it's going to come out looking all skewed. So we want to be careful that our view cube, and there's a command that they talk about in the textbook called navcube, N-A-V-V-C-U-B-E, that you put in the command line, enter, and it's going to allow you to make your settings on your design cube so you're drawing in the right axis. And when you select that, you're going to see this option comes up. You can see top right, view cube size is automatic. You can make it smaller or bigger. You can make it inactive opacity, so it kind of disappears on the screen and you can draw right through it. But you want to be able to set your display. If I drop this down, I just want to go to top if I'm drawing in 2D, so that everything is laid out in that top view for my 2D drawing. In AutoCAD, even though you're drawing a two-dimensional drawing, you're still in 3D space, so you could actually be in a vertical mode. So you want to make sure that that this axis is set initially. And I'm going to leave that there right now. You can kind of play around with that view cube, and I'm stopping on page 33, which is at 2.13. We're going to start talking about the command line window, CLW, in the next video. But this kind of gets us through 1.5 of chapters 1 and 2, and then we're going to look at I'll pull some more stuff together once we get this set up. I think it's easier once you have the software installed on your computer to start playing around with this. So I've got another video set up that kind of takes us through some of the basics of the AutoCAD. After the first couple of weeks, I really want us to be able to start working on some projects within the lab that we can output. One of the first things we're going to actually do is set up our title block so that we can put it on a sheet view and work with those things. So sometimes you do some things in the CAD software that you may think of as a little too advanced to start out with, but I think once we get going, you'll find that this actually does have some good use that we're going to be able to kind of build on everything. So once we have a title block set up, it's a good drawing exercise with our text and our lines and placing it on the sheet. We'll be able to expand on that, start putting our models in, create a couple different sheet sizes, and actually create our own templates. So it's important, number one, get your software installed. One of the biggest problems that we've had with any CAD class that I've taught in the past is computer issues, and getting the software installed, getting it stabilized, and making sure that it's available during the lab time so that we can work with it. Sitting in the class, taking notes, saying my computer's in the shop, I'll get it taken care of later, is a good sign that you could be in a little bit of trouble. So the number one thing that we need to focus on the first couple of weeks, and we got Martin Luther King's birthday coming up on a Monday, so we're going to miss a class. We'll work out some things on that Wednesday, which the lab meets, and we'll have an extra class at the end. So if you're available, if you can get some extra help from myself or somebody else, we really need to focus on getting this software installed on your laptops so that we can dive right in and get as far as we can on this. I want to get through this textbook relatively quickly. We'll hit most of the items in here with our drawing exercises. We've got some civil stuff, and then halfway through the semester or sooner, I'd like to get right into the Revit program, which gets us into some 3D modeling. Really exposes you to some high-end CAD modeling that can really open your eyes to some of these things. So we'll finish up chapter 2 next video, and start on maybe chapter 3 and get into some active drawing that I can show you on these videos. So I will be in touch.